November 10th, 2015, Paramount Animation, who was reeling off the success of the SpongeBob movie Sponge Out of Water, released its future animation slate with releases dated all the way up to 2019. One of those films was The Little Prince, which was scheduled for a US release on March 18th, 2016. But a week before the film's US release, Paramount suddenly decided to drop the film from its release schedule, which left everybody scratching their heads wondering why. And today, I think it's time to answer that question, so grab yourselves a nice hot steaming bag of Colonel's caramel popcorn and a nice cold glass of Dr. Pepper, because today I'm going to solve the mystery of The Little Prince. Hit it! Nobody expected Zootopia to become the biggest hit of 2016 so far when it released on March 4th, but the film pretty much defied everybody's expectations as Zootopia mania hit the masses. The film received rave reviews, garnering a 98% certified fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes and an A Cinema score. With that in mind, analysts projected Zootopia would gross $60 to $70 million in its opening weekend, but it even shattered those modest expectations by grossing an astonishing $75.1 million, making it the highest grossing opening weekend in Disney Animation's entire 90-plus year history. Yes, even outgrossing Disney classics like Frozen and The Lion King. In addition to the strong reviews and great word of mouth, it benefited due to the fact that it was pretty much the only family-oriented film on the market, which allowed it to soak up cash like a binge-eating Kirby. It's also suffered minimal drops week by week. In the 7 weeks of release, it's not suffered a drop less than 50%, which is incredibly rare and absolutely unheard of. The Zootopia success can also be attributed to the fantastic marketing. Remember the DMV Sloth trailer? Well, Disney did the smart thing by attaching the DMV Sloth trailer to every pressing of Star Wars The Force Awakens, and also a bunch of other family-oriented films. And believe me, I saw that trailer in theaters multiple times, and every time I saw it, the audience was laughing their ass off. It was incredibly funny, and right then and there people got what the movie was about. They also reached out to the furry community. Yes, that furry community, as a form of viral marketing for the film. Hell, the movie was so anticipated in that community that they were drawing Rule 34s before the movie even came out. That's how anticipated the movie was, at least to the furry community. I know, right? It's absolutely insane. It's grossed an astonishing $882 million, making it the highest grossing film of the year worldwide so far. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. It's a mouth-watering sum of money. And while I expected Zootopia to do very well, I didn't think it would do this well. The point is, Zootopia's unexpected success caught Paramount off guard, and they panicked, as they were worried that Zootopia would crush The Little Prince. And the competition they were releasing against didn't help matters. It would have released on the same day as the Divergent series, Allegiant, although when you look at its box office numbers, it didn't prove to be much competition after all. But it would have released a week before Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, which was one of the most anticipated films of the year, and would have crushed it one way or another. But Zootopia isn't the only reason why Paramount decided to back off from releasing Little Prince. We have to look into the studio itself and get a greater insight as to why they decided to drop it. And as you'll come to know in the next few minutes, all things are not well at Paramount. Paramount used to dominate the box office with a slew of hit franchises, and now it's pretty much a shell of its former self. It made $674 million at the domestic box office last year, compared to the billion it had made the year before that. It ranked in last place among the 6 major film studios in terms of box office revenue. And $674 million to you and me is a lot of money, but when you're a major film studio that releases multiple films a year, that's practically pathetic. Once upon a time, they had Marvel Studios, Lucasfilms, DreamWorks Animation, and DreamWorks SKG under its purview, but slowly, one by one, all of those partners started to go away. Marvel Studios and Lucasfilm were both acquired outright by Disney in 2009 and 2012 respectively for $4 billion each. DreamWorks Animation defected to rival studio 20th Century Fox, which forced Paramount to create their own animation division, and the live-action DreamWorks studio that they acquired in 2006 was spun off to be independent in 2008, where it signed a 30-film distribution deal with Disney before walking away from that deal to form Amblin Partners and have signed a new distribution deal with Universal. And now the only franchises Paramount has to its name, or at least hit franchises, are Transformers, Mission Impossible, Star Trek, and SpongeBob. Yeah, that's how far Paramount has fallen. And the only noteworthy hits that they released last year were Mission Impossible Rogue Nation and the SpongeBob movie Sponge Out of Water. And its fast-tracked VOD strategy was an unmitigated disaster. Paranormal Activity: The Ghost Dimension underperformed compared to previous entries in the series, and Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse was a major box office bomb. And 2016 so far has been a particularly bad year for Paramount. The Michael Bay directed 13 Hours underperformed, while Zoolander 2, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, and Anomalisa were all box office bombs. Zoolander 2 was the sequel to a film that came out 15 years ago that even then nobody cared about. And it was completely trounced by the R-rated superhero romp Deadpool, which defied everybody's expectations and went on to become an unexpected smash hit. It just did not connect with audiences, which is not all that surprising as comedy sequels seem to make less and less money than the first. Anyways, it's said to have cost the studio over $80 million, and is said to have caused mass layoffs of over 1,000 people, although the layoffs part was not publicly confirmed by the studio. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot tried to play in this whole counter-programming thing, which makes a lot of sense as Deadpool was targeting adults and Zootopia was targeting family audiences. But even that didn't connect with audiences as Zootopia pretty much annihilated its competition. You see, Paramount tried to sell the film as a comedy, even though it's more of a drama. Even the star power of Tina Fey of 30 Rock and Mean Girls fame couldn't save this movie. And of course, Anomalisa, which is most notable for being a stop-motion R-rated animated feature, which is not something we get too much of these days, because we have this stigma in North America that animation is just purely for kids. And while, yes, it was definitely a very interesting film, and it was critically acclaimed and people loved it, it failed to generate any interest, as it only made $3 million on a budget of $8 million. And well, yes, it wasn't a John Carter or Tomorrowland level bomb, it was still a bomb nonetheless. Oh, and I forgot to mention it was completely overshadowed every step of the way by Pixar's Inside Out. So yeah, things at Paramount are particularly awful and particularly grim. In fact, things have gotten so rotten at Paramount that their parent company Viacom publicly announced that they were looking to sell a minority stake in the studio of up to 40% in a desperate attempt to generate some cash and improve its box office stand-in to create more tentpole blockbuster franchises. So if you're wondering why they're doubling down on the Transformers Cinematic Universe and the Hasbro Cinematic Universe, well, that's why. But of course, there's one other aspect that depicts whether an animated film, or really a film in general, is a hit or a flop. And that is, of course, marketing. Take it away. Marketing is one of the most important aspects in determining whether or not a film's going to be a success or an outright flop, and nowhere is that more evident than with feature animation. Let's talk about Inside Out, the story about the emotions of an 11-year-old girl, which, yes, is a pretty hard concept, but the Pixar branding makes it an easy sell. Minions, a silly, goofy, over-the-top comedy about them getting into all sorts of crazy shenanigans while trying to find a master to serve. Easy sell. Hotel Transylvania 2, a comedy about a monster hotel and an overprotective father. Easy sell. Now what do these three films have in common, other than the fact they were all smash hits? They all come from names that people recognize: Pixar, Illumination Entertainment, and Sony Pictures Animation. You see, since families are the largest group of filmgoers that go to see animated films, they're going to want to go with names that they recognize, something they can say, "Oh, I know what that is." The Little Prince, by comparison, was made by a bunch of no-name animation studios that have no brand recognition and no reputation whatsoever. And in animation, brand recognition is everything. There are basically three things that doom the film's marketing from the start. The concept. The film is an action-adventure drama about an old man and a little girl going on adventures together, which is an incredibly hard concept to sell to a mainstream audience nowadays. And it also runs the risk of it being extremely boring to kids. You see, since 99% of theatrically released animated films in North America have some form of comedy, and since families are so conditioned to expect it, having an animated film without comedy is like having an action movie without any stunts, or a horror movie without any scares. I mean, an old man and a little girl going on adventures together? Not exactly the most exciting premise. And there's also the fear of it being a little bit pedophilic. Well, you and me know it's a well-intentioned adventure. Some parents might think, "Oh, an old man? Or a old girl? Uh-oh, that's pedophilic. We can't have that. No. So I'm guessing Paramount was kind of fearful there might be a backlash just based on the concept. 2. It's based on a book that very few people in North America have heard of. Seriously, has anybody in North America heard of The Little Prince? Hell, I didn't even hear of it until it was announced, you know? And I have knowledge of a lot of animated films. My animation knowledge is pretty good, and I literally had no idea that this book existed. I mean, the concept was already on shaky ground, but when you base it on a book that very few people know of, that's when it starts getting a little bit trickier. And ultimately, number 3, there's just, how do I say it? I don't know, there just wasn't a hook. There wasn't something to just draw people in. With an animated film, there's usually something that draws people in. Whether it's the jokes, whether it's the story, premise, color. The Little Prince did not have that at all. Literally did not have it at all. It didn't have a unique hook to bring people in, so people were just like, oh, I don't care, oh, whatever, just another animated film, who cares, blah, 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 whatever. It's like Anomalisa. There really wasn't anything to hook mainstream audiences in. And remember, even though the animation community loved it and it was critically acclaimed, a film needs more than just critical acclaim to be a success. It needs to have something that draws audiences in so they can pay the $10 to $15, or to be more accurate, want to pay the $10 to $15 to go see the film. I mean, of course, it is only fair. Now, if a report from Rotoscopers.com is to be believed, then Paramount Animation is currently in shambles. And remember, this is just purely based on speculation and rumors, so take it with a ginormous grain of salt. Basically, Paramount Animation lacks focus and creative leadership, and people have been coming and going over the last few months. There's also some rumors that films like Amusement Park, which is currently scheduled for a March 22nd, 2019 release date, might be yanked off the release schedule altogether. Although we haven't heard anything yet based on that. Considering the fact that Paramount is a major film studio that's in the business of creating tentpole blockbuster franchises, and since The Little Prince was not made for that purpose, it was likely easier for them to just drop it. They've diverted most of their money and resources into blockbusters, and at the end of the day, they probably just didn't have enough money left over to properly market The Little Prince. And they didn't market it at all. They barely marketed it. And I mean, while it was never going to be the blockbuster hit that Paramount wanted, it deserved at least a little bit of marketing because it looked very intriguing and exciting, but at last I guess it just wasn't to be. Although, the story does have a somewhat happy ending. The film was released theatrically on March 11, 2016 in Canada, because it was released by a completely different distributor, known as Entertainment One, or E1 for short. And a week later, on March 18, 2016, the online streaming service Netflix picked up the US distribution rights to The Little Prince, and planned to release it sometime later this year. So there you have it, that's the mystery of The Little Prince all wrapped up in a nice, tight little bow. That's all the time we have for today. This is ThatKidDouglas, aka the Unhero, signing out. Deuces, stay frosty and keep it weird. Woo! Cue an outro sequence now.